And now we're moving to Russia, from one Russian diplomat to another. Our next speaker is one of the youngest ones at our conference, Anna Valerievna Pervuškina. She's a second-year student of the master's program at the Faculty of History in Moscow. She graduated 2 years ago by defending her work, Count Karl Vasilievich Nesselrode, at the beginning of his diplomatic career. The current area of her scientific interest is the foreign policy of Russia in the first half of the 19th century, the relations between the Russian Empire and France during the reign of Emperors Alexander I and Nicholas I. And since 2019, she has been working on her dissertation about Count Karl Vasilievich Nesselrode as diplomat and politician. So, Ms. Pervuškina, please, the screen is yours.
Thank you. Hello. The topic of my report is Count Nesselrode at the Congress in Ljubljana, or in the Congress of Ljubljana. With your permission, I would like to start my little essay. Firstly, we need to say a few words about Count Nesselrode. In 1816, Count Nesselrode was appointed a manager of the Foreign Colleague of Russian Empire. He had been running it together with Count Capodistria for 7 years. After the resignation of Count Capodistria, Count Nesselrode remained at the position all alone. Since 1822, Count Nesselrode served of the foreign affairs of the Russian Empire. He was a minister for 34 years. Unfortunately, in Russian historiography, the image of Count Capodistria has negative characteristics. Count Nesselrode served in the diplomatic service of the Russian Empire for more than 50 years, but all his actions was reduced by many researchers only to the late period of his diplomatic activity, which includes the Crimean War. The failure of the Russian diplomacy and the Russian army during this war cast a shadow over the entire activity of Count Nesselrode, cancelling out all his merits in the diplomatic service. His agreement with the Austria position throughout his diplomatic career began to be perceived as venality and complicity to Prince Metternich. At the time of the events of 1821, Count Nesselrode already had some experience behind him. He had managed to visit 3 diplomatic missions. He was in Berlin, The Hague, and the Paris at the court of Napoleon Bonaparte. It was in the last mission where Count Nesselrode was able to prove his usefulness and show himself as a trustworthy person to Emperor Alexander. Indeed, Emperor Alexander noticed Count Nesselrode, singled him out, and brought the Count closer to him. After the victory of the Napoleon Bonaparte, the Emperor decided not to stop and move beyond the borders of the Russian Empire in order to remove as many countries as possible for the rule of France. The current Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Russian Empire, Count Rumyantsev, was already very old and couldn't accompany the Emperor on his foreign campaigns. So Count Nesselrode replaced him, and by all means, our hero was able to take part in all the important events of that historical period. Let's examine quickly his deeds. He worked on the issue of Austria joining the fourth anti-French coalition. It was difficult work because Austria don't want to join this coalition. And furthermore, he was fortunate enough to be present at the ceremonial entry of the Russian troops into Paris, and also to be a participant of the well-known Vienna Congress. It is important to understand that Emperor Alexander was a self-sufficient politician. He had his own vision of the foreign policy of the Russian Empire, which was reflected in the activities of Count Nesselrode, not only at the Congress of the Holy Alliance. A feature of Emperor Alexander was his unwillingness to make decisions that would not allow him to retreat. He didn't like making final decisions. Therefore, his policy was ambivalent. From the very beginning of his reign, he wanted stability, but he couldn't not establish it. For example, at the Congress in Trapau, Count Nesselrode was playing for time at the negotiations because he knew that the desire of his emperor not to make rash promises to Austria and not to commit himself to Prince Metternich ahead of time. However, Count Nesselrode was not an independent diplomat at the Leipzig Congress, apart from the will of his emperor. He worked with Count Capodistria, who was also appointed by the emperor as a Secretary of State. As a result, Count Nesselrode and Count Capodistria were the traditional representatives of the Russian Empire at the Congress of the Holy Alliance. Despite of the fact that Count Nesselrode was limited by several factors, this doesn't mean that he personally did nothing. At the Congress in Leipzig, the representatives present the empire with a note dated February 1821. In it, the representative substantiated the use of armed forces in Naples. In their opinion, the revolution in Naples threatened the rest of the states with revolutionary sentiments. They believed that the hotbed of revolution, which had reappeared in Europe, must be destroyed before it could spread and capture new territories. Count Nesselrode was a well-known opponent of revolutions. In the initial stages, Emperor Alexander still had listened to the opinion of the Count Capodistria, who was more liberal. However, the emperor's desire for stability gradually tilted him in the other direction. At this Congress, one could notice the turn of Emperor Alexander to close rapprochement with Austria in solving revolutionary issues. And since Count Nesselrode was a well-known supporter of the alliance of Russia with Austria, this indicated the strengthening of his position. As you know, France and Great Britain didn't support the intervention of Russian or Austrian troops in the Naples affair. Such an outcome, in the opinion of Count Nesselrode, was a saving option because only this alliance, in his opinion, provided the benefits of complete external security. The mutual assistance that reigned between the members of the Union was necessary to resist the flames of revolution. In his letter, Count Nesselrode insisted that the actions were not a policy of arbitrance or illegal actions, since the emperor's allies themselves turned to him with a request, in both cases, in Trapau and here in Leipzig. The Russian Empire pursued no other goal than maintaining mutual security guaranteed to all European states by existing treaties, so the Count thought. In conclusion, it should be said that Count Nesselrode at the Congress in Laibach didn't carry out stormy and vigorous activity. This is due to the fact that his position was identical to that to the Emperor Alexander position. As well as the fact that from the beginning of his political career, the Count saw Austria as a reliable ally of the Russian Empire. And in addition, the program of action was worked out by him and Count Capodistria at the stage of the Congress in Troppau. And in his letter to the ambassadors in Paris and in London, the Count Nesselrode wrote about the naturalness of Russian support for Austria when she turned to Russia for help in settling affairs in Italy. Count Nesselrode showed great activity in an effort to explain to the courts of France and Great Britain that the actions of the Russian Empire are completely legal and don't violate the rights of legitimate governments. In his opinion, all nations are extremely interested in preserving such a beneficial union as the Holy Alliance, since it was he who ensured the complete external security of all states. During Congress in Laibach, a national liberation movement against Turkish rule was also launched. We can say that at that time, the Russian Empire didn't seek to support the Greek rebels in Turkey, going beyond the chronological framework of the Congress in Laibach. It should be said that at the first stage of the outbreak of the Eastern Question, Count Nesselrode supported the decision of Alexander I not to intervene in this conflict. And at the end, I want to say that it is very popular opinion that Count Nesselrode was a servant of the Prince Metternich, but I think that it's not true, because, for example, in Eastern Question, Count Nesselrode, he was he has a different opinion from Austria, and he always said to the Emperor Nicholas that Austria want to prevent Russian policy in this region. That's all. Thank you for your attention.